There are a lot of people around the country hoping it is just a start, but still it is an historic day in Evanston, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. That city is now the very first in America to make reparations available to some of its black citizens after generations of discrimination, particularly in the housing sector. Evanston City Council last night voted 8-1 to distribute $400,000 to eligible families for home repairs or down payments on property. The details of the plan, quote, the program is being funded through donations and revenue from a 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana. The city has pledged to distribute $10 million over 10 years. Qualifying residents must either have lived in or been a direct descendant of a black person who lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969 and who suffered discrimination in housing because of city ordinances, policies, or practices. Joining us now is Jelani Cobb, staff writer for The New Yorker and professor of Columbia Journalism School. Jelani, Professor Cobb, I should say, thank you so much for joining me on this. It does feel like an historic day. For people who don't understand, the housing sector, the housing market in America is really ground zero for structural racism.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole body of historical literature on this. Literally, you can just tick off the books that, historians of this stuff know. And it is, very clear that, housing has been the major engine for wealth acquisition for American households. And so what is the compound effect of having a whole sector of the community, a whole sector of the population excluded, by and large, from the ability to accrue equity in their homes, the ability to get home loans, the ability to get into housing that would then become a means of financing college for their kids or their grandchildren or retirement. There's a whole set of compound effects here. And so it's not shocking at all that if people were looking for some place to begin pulling this ball of yarn, that housing would be one key string that you could pull at.
Yeah, and what I think will shock people is how recently this structural racism was being practiced. City leaders decided to first address housing following a report last year that showed how, starting with the arrival of the first black resident in 1855, Evanston, the city in question here, restricted where blacks could live. Despite the city passing a fair housing law in 1968, evidence showed that as late as 1985, Jelani, I believe you and I were alive at that point, real estate agents continued to steer black renters and home buyers to a section of town where they were the majority. The vestiges of racial segregation remain evident. 1985, I think one of the meaningful things about this is we're talking about a group of people. This is not slavery, which was a long time ago. This is the 20th century. And for people who have trotted out the argument, oh, this all happened a long time ago, why should we be doing something about it now? This neutralizes that argument entirely.
It absolutely does. And, when people are talking about slavery, first off, I mean, in historical terms, slavery is not that long ago. We kind of see the impacts of that. But even if we didn't talk about that, even if we started from simply the 20th century and we spotted people, all the discriminatory practices that happened before then, we would still have a huge debt, a huge set of inequalities that were engineered by public policy. And so this is not alarming or shocking. The other thing is that as housing was created, city after city after city, Evanston wasn't alone in this. This wasn't some unique policy. There were cities across the country that developed restrictive covenants and different policies, federal government policy that was enacted to prevent homes from being sold to African Americans or developments even being built if they were going to be open to African Americans purchasing there. And so, yeah, this is a huge concern, and it's good to see that Evanston has begun the conversation that we need to have in a much bigger context about this.
Folks in support of reparations, people who are engaged on the structural racism issue and the racial justice issue are saying, as goes Evanston, perhaps so could go the country, right? We're talking about a state level initiative here, and I think some people hope that this will be just a bellwether for what could be done at the federal level. Are you optimistic about that? A lot of people say if you're really going to deal with the legacy of racism, you have to look at the U.S. government.
Sure. I mean, I think that there's a possibility. I don't think that we should have any illusions about this being a kind of one and done situation, that this is a very protracted conversation, that we're probably at the very opening end of, the very beginning of, and it'll go on. Even with far less controversial policies, it took us a century, essentially, to get any form of health care. We still don't have a national health care plan, but even to get Obamacare and Medicare in place, it took decades. And so this is the beginning of a conversation that will hopefully develop into something much bigger on a federal scale.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.